An Islamic terrorist group backed by Iran has fired a missile at the United Arab Emirates. The attack came during a visit by Israel's president over the weekend.
The rebels are vowing to continue attacking the UAE as long as it's friendly with Israel. Chris Mitchell has the latest on the UAE's response.
The UAE says it destroyed a ballistic missile site in Yemen after shooting down a missile fired at their country by an Iranian-backed rebel group. The attack came during the historic visit of Israeli President Isaac Herzog to the UAE capital Abu Dhabi after the two nations signed an historic peace agreement in 2020.
We are two successful nations who basically started with very little in our hands, developed our lands into a successful paradise, and this sends a message to the entire region that there is an alternative for peace and living together, and that the sons and daughters of Abraham can reside and dwell together in peaceful coexistence.
Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed thanked Herzog for Israel's support after the two recent missile attacks by the Houthi rebels.
It's a stance that demonstrates our common view of the threats to regional stability and peace, particularly those posed by militias and terrorist forces, as well as our shared understanding of the importance of taking a firm stance against them.
Dr. Najat Al-Sayed of the American University in Dubai said the timing of the visit demonstrates that the new relationships between Israel and its Arab neighbors will stand up to threats by Iran's proxies in the region.
We're going to support the warm peace, which is the main kind of peace that kills the hostile and extremist ideologies.
Israeli Reserve Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser said it also comes in the context of the U.S. pulling back in the region and developments with Iran.
Coming to the UAE in a time like that, when the fate of the Iranian nuclear project is going to be determined, is very important for Israel, and to show that we are there together with the United Arab Emirates facing this radical threat. It's very important strategically.
The U.S. State Department condemned the attack. Spokesman Ned Price tweeting, while Israel's president is visiting the UAE to build bridges and promote stability across the region, the Houthis continue to launch attacks that threaten civilians. Meanwhile, the rebels threaten more attacks.
The Yemeni armed forces confirmed that the UAE enemy state will remain unsafe as long as the tools of the Israeli enemy remain in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, launching aggression against our dear country.
Despite the attack, President Herzog continued his trip as planned. Both Israel and the UAE pledge they won't let Iran stand in their way from creating a new Middle East. To maintain the strong and growing alliance in the region, it will need the help of the U.S. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, peace is breaking out in the Middle East. It's all because of the Abraham Accords. It's all because of a bold initiative to say, let's bring peace. Let's bring peace to Israel. Let's bring peace to the Middle East. And certain ideologies that are just bent on destruction of Israel don't like that at all. What I don't understand is how can you possibly negotiate with Iran? How can you possibly say they'll hold to any agreement, that they aren't trying to develop a nuclear weapon? Now more than ever, we need to keep the pressure on to say, no, if you're going to continue with this kind of ideology of hate, that you are going to be isolated from the international community. We're going to shut off your sources of funds. We're going to boycott you. We're going to impose severe sanctions on you until you change. Without that, I just don't see that there's any way to have peace or to go into any kind of negotiations with them.